Our survivor is Esther Krosberg. The interviewer is Lori Fine. We're in Brooklyn, New York, the United States of America, and our language is English. Our survivor is Esther Krosberg. Her maiden name was SHOAH. I'm Lori Fine. We're in Brooklyn, New York, the United States of America, and our language is English. Today is September 26, 1996. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please tell us your name with the spelling?
Esther, E-S-T-H-E-R, Krosberg, K-R-O-S-B-E-R-G.
What was your maiden name?
My maiden name was Kawa, K-A-W-A.
What was your Hebrew name?
Esther.
Did you have any nicknames?
No, endearing terms like Esther and things like that.
Could you give us your birth date?
June 11th, 1923.
How old are you now?
73.
Could you tell us where you were born?
I was born in Schädelce. S-E, oi. D-L-E-C-E, Poland.
Do you remember anything about this town?
Not really. I was very young. I was about 5 when we left for Brussels, Belgium.
Why did you leave?
Well, the economy was very bad, and my parents had a hard time feeding their family, and they took the opportunity of going to a country where they hoped they'll have a better future.
Do you remember anything about this new home?
Well, it was really an apartment, and I started going to kindergarten, and all my education was done in French, public school and the such, and then lyceum, you know, which is the equivalent of high school, and that's it. I had a couple of years in college, Université de Bruxelles.
What was your house like?
Well, it consisted of 2 twin brothers that were 9 years older than me, and a sister 10 years older. She was the oldest.
What were their names?
My sister's name was Dinela Dora, and one of my brothers was Moishe, Maurice, in French, and then Peretz, Paul. That was twin brothers.
I'd like to know what the apartment looked like.
It was spacious. As a matter of fact, at one point, my mother's mother from Poland came, and she lived with us for a while.
What was her name?
Sura
Last name?
Gurowitz. And I think we were quite happy with little fights, brother and sister. I was the youngest, so I was very spoiled by everybody. There was a tremendous gap between my siblings and me, so everybody tried to spoil me, and they spoiled me sometimes a little too much. And then, naturally, there was a fight, or a verbal fight.
The apartment, do you know if you had electricity or running water?
We had electricity and cold running water.
Where was the plumbing, the bathroom?
The bathroom was outside. Yeah. Specifically when I got married, I remember where the bathroom was. It was on the same landing, but not in the apartment.
But it was inside the building?
Yeah. Not after I got married. We lived in another apartment where you had to go. I lived on the 2nd floor, and the bathroom was on a courtyard. And when it was winter, it was bitter. And when the child was born, my older daughter, then we had a party for her because she was too tiny to go down.
Do you remember what the city looked like when you were a young child?
Oh, I found it very, very beautiful. Brussels is a gorgeous city. That's my first remembrance. They have a lot of art. As a matter of fact, with school, we went to churches, and there were paintings that are nowadays extremely valuable. And the other little children in my class asked me, "Would your mother let you go? Because you are Jewish." I said, "My mother will let me go." And they did. My parents did let me go. And we saw beautiful art, and that impressed me. I was always, I don't like the novel art, the Picasso kind, but I love art. I love paintings.
What was the Jewish life like in your community?
Very nice. Very nice. Nobody, till the war came and Hitler instilled hate to the Jews, nobody really knew the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. As a matter of fact, there was one instance when my sister went with my mother to rent a house, and the landlord found out that we are Jewish before we took the apartment or the house. So they told him. He says, "My God," and I always thought they have crooked noses and black hair, and they are like devils, and look, you are so nice. And they really were. And then when Hitler came, when the Nazis came, I should say, then it changed because they made so much propaganda against the Jews. So.
Could you give us your father's name, please?
Shulim, S-Z-U-L-I-M.
What did he do for a living?
They had a little fabrication, like, bonneterie, which is wool, sweaters, My mother used to cut it and sew it. They worked together, that kind of stuff.
When you think back to your father, what thought comes to mind?
That he was the most, I can't express it, he was exceptional. Nice, and after all those years of marriage, he used to come around my mother and kiss her, and very lovable to his children and to his wife.
What was your mother's name?
Frida, F-R-I-E-D-A.
And her maiden name?
Gurovitz. Oh, I can't spell that.
Your mother helped with your father in the business?
Well, she was the main worker there because she was a seamstress, so she knew what to do. If needed, she made my dresses and things like that.
What special memory do you have of your mother?
My mother was the strong one, but she was very sweet at the same time because she knew where to put her foot down. I didn't always like it, but that it was for my own good. And I realize it now that I have my own children and grandchildren.
Do you remember the names of the schools you attended?
All I know is that one of the schools I attended was located on Rue Haute. Rue means street, Haute means high. Rue Haute. Haute spelled H-A-U-T-E.
Did you have any religious education?
Well, let's put it that way. When before that even, my mother was kosher in the house, right? Then when my grandmother came from Poland, my mother's mother, then we were a little more kosher, if you want to, because she was very religious, wore a sheitel, like I mentioned, that very often to everybody. She wore a sheitel that wasn't set, and that looked very ugly on her. And I used to sleep with her. And she had gorgeous white hair, wavy, beautiful. I says, "What do you need that for?" Oh, she wouldn't be without the wig, And yes, My mother wouldn't take non-kosher food and things like that in the house. But I wouldn't say like maybe they ride on a Saturday sometimes or what, you know. They weren't strictly observant.
Do you remember what languages were spoken in your home?
Yiddish. They spoke French. Brussels speaks French and Flemish. But mainly they dealt with people their own kind, and the easiest way for them was to speak Yiddish. And they did. So that's why I was raised with the Yiddish language.
How did you spend your free time when you were young?
Oh, at that point I had a million friends.
Do you remember any of their names?
I had a Gitler, I had, who else? I have the pictures, then I remember them. I have a Regina, and I think it's even the same Regina that opened the nightclub here. I wanted to call her. I have a picture, a school picture with her, and I wanted to call her and let her know, and maybe, but I never did somehow. I figured maybe it's so important to her that I don't want to bother, you know? Not that I'm very modest, but you know, to bother maybe she won't even answer the phone. You know, I think it's the same Regina. She comes from Brussels too, the age is correct and all that, but I never did something about it.
How would you spend that free time with the friends?
Oh, we used naturally to walk. Nobody had cars at that point, and we were too young to have cars anyway. We went to the movies walking, then I belonged to the Hebrew Zionist organizations. One of them is DROR, D-R-O-R. And it was Chaverim, like you said, you know, and what else? And we danced and sang folk songs. And
do you remember any of these folk songs?
Yeah, sometimes I do sing them, but I don't remember it offhand like that.
Is there any song you do remember you'd like to sing?
I probably do, but just, you know. And then we went and go to the movies, and we're always a lot of kids together. Like, my house was the central. Sometimes, if I didn't have a good report card, which they did get every week, if I had a point off because on dictation or math, that was okay. But if it was because I didn't study or not made my homework, my mother said, no way will you go out this weekend. And she kept her word, and I knew it. So if somebody rang the bell, she can come out. She had a bad report card. So...
Do you remember the synagogue?
The synagogue, there was one main one called the Holländische Schiel, you know, and I don't remember much of it because, frankly, I was at that point not too interested because the services were long and boring, and so I did not attend too much.
Did your family observe any Jewish rituals?
Oh, yes. When came, except for riding on Shabbos, they would not eat treife, they would not mixed millerdik and fleischig, and what no, they wouldn't bring like treife in, you know, things like that.
How was Shabbos observed in your home?
Well, my mother lit candles, you know. But I didn't pay too much attention to that neither because I was busy talking to my friends and whatnot, you know.
Do you remember Pesach?
Pesach was a ritual, yes. That was very nice. Just our immediate family. Though my mother had a couple of sisters living in Brussels and one brother. But each went their own way. They saw each other, but not, it wasn't, how should I say, prepared like here. When we say Pesach, we know it's a big feast and it's people or family get together and all that. But over there it wasn't like that. At that point, they couldn't afford it for one, you know.
What were you doing before the war?
I was working, I went to school, first of all, right? And then I got jobs in offices, like, you know, I have my cards to prove it. And that's about all, and various...
What were your plans for the future?
Now?
Then?
Then, oh, I really didn't have any plans. Like every young girl, you dream about boys, you know, and I went out a lot, and that's it.
Did you keep track of current events?
Sometimes. Because that's a funny thing that you ask. It's not funny, but it's something. During the war, there was no Jewish paper. And my parents used to go once a week to bring, I don't remember the name of the paper, Jewish paper, that they did not dare read on the streetcar. Right? They brought it home.
Where did they get it?
There was one place where they sold that particular paper. They had to take the streetcar to go there and come back. And during the war, naturally we couldn't have the radio, we couldn't have the paper, the Jewish paper. And
did you have a radio before the war?
Oh yeah, they took it away.
Who took it?
We had to turn it in to the Belgian authorities. And we had a radio. But then after the war, somehow, we got that one back because I could prove that it had been taken. So, but coming back to the newspaper, my parents heard news from people, etc., etc., saying that the Germans advanced so well. So, meaning they probably lost there. That's why they say they won. Now they wanted to read, and they couldn't read it. Now,
how did they get news? How did they get news?
Somehow by mouth, and somehow I don't even remember how they got the news.
Do you remember any refugees coming to the area from other parts of Europe?
Yes, that was before the war. As a matter of fact, my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, came with a brother from Vienna before the war.
What did they tell you?
I don't know. I really don't remember. And he was my brother-in-law, and we are still in touch. But I really can't say. Maybe it's a blank or something, you know.
Were you aware of the rise of the Nazis?
Yes, but it didn't touch us because we were in Belgium. Belgium was not occupied at that point. Now, what I wanted to bring out with the newspaper, I come back to that because, so they made me read it in French. Now, I had to translate because they didn't understand every word. The first few times that I read, I stumbled off every word, and I explained it should be like this and that, and they told me the Yiddish expression of it. After a couple of weeks, I just put my eyes on the newspaper, and I read it in Yiddish perfectly. So, that's it.
When did your life begin to change?
After we had to go on hiding.
What caused you to do that?
Because they were starting to take Jews during the war. And
when was that?
That was in 41, 42. They started taking Jews. So my parents rented a small apartment, 2 rooms, and I was hiding with them.
Did anyone try to escape?
They tried. My sister and husband and child went to Switzerland with somebody, a guide tour that she had to pay. And when she got there, they had a hard time accepting them because they didn't want to. And in Switzerland, they were separated. One was in one camp, the other one in the other camp, the child a third camp, you know. And they were supposed to pick us up, my parents and I, because my brother was hidden someplace else. And he was caught, the guide, and we never found another one to take us to Switzerland.
When
And
was this?
that was in 42, I guess.
What happened before this, in the late 30s, the early, 1940, 1941? What was life like?
Well, the war broke out. We had a little boy, my sister's son. He was about 4 years old. My niece had just been born, my brother's daughter. We fled to France. She was a few months old.
How did you get to France?
By stop, auto stop is in French, hiking. And military picked us up, with the babies and everybody. And little by little we went to Toulouse, France. And when we got there was a shortage in living quarters. So we slept for a while on the station, the railroad station, with the babies and everybody.
What did you have with you?
Just the necessary things that you need. How much could you carry? So.
How did you get food?
Well, we bought. You could buy it. It was still a free France then, before Pétain took over.
What happened before that while you were still in Brussels? How did you get food?
Well, you could buy food if it wasn't rationed, because then after a while they installed the ration cards.
Was there a difference between the Jews and the non-Jews with what they were allowed?
The only thing is it was on our real name. Like, for instance, I had a Belgian identity card, and that came later. But to get the stamps, you only could get it if you say your real name. And with the stamps, on rations, you could get food.
Was it readily available?
Readily available if you paid a lot of money on the black market. Then you could get anything you wanted. Like eggs were only for children, but if I wanted eggs, if I paid for it, I could get it. So that was the thing.
And what happened in France?
In France, coming back to that, so we slept on the railroad benches, and then we finally found an apartment, if you call it an apartment, but okay, with the toilets where you have to stand, stretch your feet and stand, and there was a big hall downstairs, not in the apartment, and it was a street where only prostitutes lived. And I must tell that fact. They naturally were on the ground floor, and they had beds showing with the door open, and that was the street where the men came, I guess.
Do you remember the name of the street?
Rue du Canal, I'm not sure. I think it was Rue du Canal, Canal Street. And when I had to get out of the street or in the street to come home, my father used to pick me up and take me, okay? And anyway, there is a footnote to that. My parents had gone out. My brother-in-law had escaped from, the one in Arizona, from a camp in France. And he was hidden in the apartment. My niece was a few months old. We knew she wasn't alone. Now, there was a little fire in the house. And I came back just at that moment. Nobody was supposed to know that my brother-in-law was there. He never went out because he had escaped from the camp. And when I arrived, oh, there is a fire there. All the women, the prostitutes were there. Wonderful people. True. And they are going to pick out the baby. They know the baby is alone. So I said, don't worry, I'll pick her up. Okay, and I went upstairs, put the baby down. There wasn't a big to-do. The fire wasn't that big. They took care of it. The firemen came, etc., etc., and then the prostitutes pushing money in the handler, in the little hand from the baby.
Did they realize that you were in hiding?
No, no.
Why did they give the baby money?
As a token of love, as a token of sympathy, as a token that we had to take the baby out of the apartment because of the fire.
Did anyone besides your immediate family realize that you were in hiding?
And we all were in the same boat. Each one went his own way, we didn't even know. Then after a while we went back to Brussels.
Did you ever have to wear a yellow star in France?
Oh yes, I have pictures to show it.
In France?
Not in France, no, in Belgium.
When
in France we were not really settled.
When did you leave France?
Oh, a few months after we were there, because we couldn't live there. We didn't have the money to live there. My parents had no occupation there, and we needed a way of to make money. Any money, little or big, just to feed the family. So we decided, what the heck, we'll go back anyway, because we have connections to find work and all that.
What happened once you got back to Brussels?
Well, it wasn't, for the moment, till about 42, it wasn't that bad, you know. My parents worked, we had an apartment, a decent apartment, and not a house, but just even, one time we had a house, but it wasn't a house, we rented it. But there it was an apartment, and it went pretty nice. We had our machines, special wool machines, you know, that when you sew it cuts cold serrateurs, you know, and it wasn't bad. But then they started sending little papers saying that you have to reunite in Malines, which was halfway between Brussels and Antwerp.
Who had sent you this paper?
I beg your pardon?
Who sent you this paper?
The Belgian government was forced to send it. They didn't want to.
How did you know this?
Because they said it, and we met Belgian people that said, we were forced to send that. We don't want to send it, and if you don't want to go, don't go. While delivering that paper, they said it. So my brothers figured, we'll go, whatnot. Otherwise, yeah, they said, if they don't go, then the parents will be taken and this and that, the rest of the family. I was a young girl, you know. So if they go, I should say, then we will be left in peace, right? So my mother had brains. She says, none of you are going. You don't know what will become of you once you are there. You know, and that was Belgium. That was about half an hour to go to Antwerp. By train was half an hour, and this was in between, right? She says, we'll all go into hiding, and none of you are going. And they listened to her.
How did you feel about it?
Oh, whatever my mother said at that point, I was too young to know anything, you know. So that's where my parents rented 2 rooms, you know, from a spacious apartment, left everything be, the machinery and whatever, you know, and that's when I met that German woman that I was hiding with.
Who was this?
This was Madame Bonjean. She was a German, but she was at that time aged already. I call aged now, I'm older than she was then. But she must have been in the late 50s or early 60s. I don't exactly know. And she had come to Belgium when she was 18 years old and married a Belgian guy and had a daughter, and both of them, I think she divorced her husband, I'm not sure. Anyway, she was alone, lost her daughter, and...
We're going to stop the tape now.
Okay.
September 26, 1996.
Well, the woman, where we rented the apartment, my parents did, there was that woman that had come from Germany and had been married to a Belgian guy, and she was working as a cleaning woman. And she was nice, right? Now, when they took my parents away, I had just come back. I didn't sleep in their apartment for safety reasons. I rented one room by my sister's landlady that was not Jewish, and she paid more attention to the little dog. She didn't care about anything else.
Did she know you were Jewish?
Yes, definitely. And I paid her good money to rent that room. And every day in the morning I washed and went to my parents, and I was with them the whole day, ate there and everything. And so that day I came back, picked up laundry, not by Chinese, by Belgian people washing them, and with a big pack. And I was going into the street where my parents lived, and there was a car in between two houses. Next door was a mattress store. And I was very aware of the license plates, because the Belgian license plates were white, written on red, red on top of the white with the letters. The background was white. The German cars all had white, but written in black on top, so we knew that's a German car. That particular car had a Belgian license plate, and I was continuing going there. I suppose I thought that that car is for because who else would have car, from that man from next door, from the mattresses. And there was a butcher at the corner, and he knew I lived there. And when I passed by, he says, "Miss, don't go into your house. They are taking your parents." So I asked him to take it. Here, I'm with a big pack, and I want to go and see, not directly come to the house, go the other side maybe and see them. And no, he didn't want to accept it because he was afraid, being that if they are German and they take the people away, he doesn't want to get involved. So I went a little farther, went to a grocery store. He says, "I forgot to have an errand that I have to do, and then I can't carry that. Could you please hold it?" And they did. So I ran on the other side of the street, at the other corner, and looked where it didn't matter if I was there, but I couldn't see them anymore, and that was the last I had seen them. That's then.
When was that?
That was in July of '43. Then after that, I went to some friends, and a couple, they were under fictitious names, but I needed a place, right? So I knew where that woman worked, that German woman. I went and said, "Eventually, would you consider, if I pay all expenses, moving and the rent and everything else, would you consider to rent an apartment with me?" She knew what it was all about, being that she had been in the house.
This was your parents' landlord?
No, not a landlord, tenant, also from... she didn't own the house. She just, lived there. And she said yes. Meanwhile, there were two doors, right? And the Germans, when they took somebody out of a home, they put a seal on the door. You couldn't break the seal. That was against the law, if you want. It wasn't against the law to take Jews, but it was against the law to do. And I had another key. If I needed to take out something, and the Germans shouldn't notice that somebody went in there because they didn't make an inventory. And, and I did that, but they were like, my mother, we had gotten herring, food, and it wasn't salted. So she took a big enamel pail and salted the herrings, we should have it, and put it in the basement. We called it a cellar, you know. And they'd hidden in the wall French francs. When we were in France, and it was still valid, but at a less price than the Belgian money. And I figured I'll test that woman if she's honest. I told her where the money should be and to bring it to me. 1 week passed, another week passed. She says she cannot find the money there. I figured I cannot trust her because I knew it was there. She had to find it, okay? Till after a month, she says, I found it. It had fallen in the pail. And when she emptied the pail, she found it. So I saw that she was honest. I realized that. And then I made her rent an apartment in another neighborhood called Krosberg. And
so it was in her name?
In her name.
She didn't live with you, but she had rented?
She lived with us.
She moved?
I paid for moving, for gas, coal, electricity. I paid for all that, you know. I had still some money from my parents.
Did she mind moving?
No, she was more comfortable where we were then than in a dingy two-room apartment, right? And
what was her name?
Madame Bonjean. And we finally moved there, and it was a very small street. On one corner was I, on the other corner the Belgian police. And I wasn't aware that they knew that I was there. They came up once, but I wasn't home. I had a girlfriend sleeping over, and she didn't speak French too well, and I don't know what she told him, and I never heard from them. After the war, I went over to the police station. I says, ha, 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 there I was. And you didn't even know about it. They said, that's what you think. So I realized that it wasn't so. They knew all along. So that's Madame Bonjean. But we lived till the war ended, you know. Then we had the story that she had a brother in Germany, and he had a friend. And one day I'm sitting in the house, she was at work, and somebody rings the bell. I was on the second floor, and looked out the window. I says, yes, a civilian guy. So he said, I would like to speak to Madame Bonjean. Says, well, she isn't here. So I figured, let me go down and see what it's all about. I went down. I realized he was a high-ranking German officer.
How did you know that?
Because he was civilian. The soldier would be in uniform, obligatory. And he wasn't. That's the first indication I had that he was more than a simple soldier. So he said yes. I explained that he was the brother of the friend of her brothers. So I made him come up. I said she'll come at that and that time. I don't remember the time that she was supposed to come home. And if you want to wait for her, you are welcome. To everybody else, I said that she's my aunt, but to him I didn't even say that because he might be aware that I'm not family really. So, fine, she came, she invited him for dinner, and she was very happy to see him, and he was basically very nice. But he was still a German, and I was still Jewish. So, after a few times when she invited him for dinner, I left the house. So one day he says to her, who is that nice girl that... She says, well, she gave an excuse, and then she says to me, you better stay home one time when he comes. Well, I had to. I spoke German very fluently, then, without mixing any Jewish words in. And he says, you know, you could come to work for us. You are very fluent in German. Oh, I says, that's out of the question. Says, ask Madame Bonjean. I sleep late, I like my ease, and I don't have to work, and I don't want to work, and he took it. He had no alternative. And so then he came for my birthday. She must have told him when my birthday was. He came with flowers and wine and whatnot. And then he asked me a question. He said, you don't like Germans, do you? I never said a word about that. I wouldn't have dared bring up the question. Well, how do you answer a question like that? I was stubborn enough to say, not to say, I love you. I'm certainly not going to say that. So I gave the example in reverse. Let's suppose Germany is a happy country, everybody has everything. Now all of a sudden, Belgium comes, invades them. And they take away their brothers, their sisters, for work, husbands, children, and there is a war on. It's not pleasant, everything is rationed, you don't have food. Would you like the Belgium? He said, I understand. And the funniest part is that at that time I worked in the underground, and I had a...
How did that begin? How did you get involved?
Well, through friends. They said, well, would you help? Because I didn't really have the appearance of being Jewish. My hair was black, because who would change color of hair at that time? It wasn't in style, and I couldn't afford it probably. So they asked me if I would do it, because the appearance, the language was no problem. I went to school there, so I spoke it like a native. I wouldn't say perfectly, but at least like a native, right? So that gave me the freedom, and I had the identity card that I had paid my girlfriend to get me, you know, hers.
How did you make arrangements?
Well, I met that girl in Lyceum. There were benches where two girls sit together. It was an all-girls school. And she was my companion from class. And when it came that I needed a false identity card, I asked her if she would give it to me. She said, my mother doesn't want to. It involved to say that she lost it and pay 10 cents for the whole card. For me, after a while, she came back. My mother said, if you pay so and so much, I don't even remember how much, but it was a lot of money then. And if you pay me so and so much, she'll let me give it to you, pay or sell it to you, you know? I says, fine. And that's how I got the identity card.
What was the name on this?
Elizabeth Caffio.
What happened with the picture on that card?
Oh yeah, I never changed the picture of that card, because part of it was on the picture, the stamp, and part of it on the card itself. That's number one. Number two, it was attached with staplers. The Germans were very well aware that people bought identity cards, and they checked the staples to see if it had been removed and replaced by others. So I figured I'll take a chance. I was 17 at the time, and in Belgium, every girl or every person 15 years old gets an identity card. And I could say, oh, I was very young then. If there was a question, but nobody, a German even, wouldn't think that I would carry and present it to them without being my picture. So, and the funniest part I must add is that after the war, during the war, I once met that girl, and she was with a German soldier. I had come into that neighborhood for papers, and I made believe I didn't see them, and it was a very wide street.
What was your feeling when you saw him, saw them together?
Horrible, because she was A girl like every other girl, not Jewish, but, you know, she was okay. You know, very funny even in class. She made me laugh when I got better points off because of that. You know, I really had nothing against her. And from far away she saw me, and she starts yelling, "Esther, come here! I want you to meet my fiancé." Okay? Okay, fiancé, I met you. Bye-bye, I'm in a hurry. Then she added, "What are you doing here?" Because when I bought the card, I said I'm going to Switzerland, but I never made it. So I says, "No, I came back now. I went to France and I came here. I'm leaving again." Right? Now, after that, after the liberation, I met her, or she looked me up, and she says, "I need a paper because my fiancé is American, and I have to show that I helped you during the war. Could you give me a paper?" I said, "Oh, by any means. Sure, you get a paper." And I was ready to ask the same amount, not even more, but the same amount that I had to pay her. But she never came for the paper. She managed without it, I guess, right? So she's someplace in America, and I don't even know where nor what. So,
How were you involved with the underground? What did you do?
what I did was, first of all, messenger with guns. And the Germans used to stop a streetcar. All the entrances, or the places you go out, what do you call that again?
Exits?
Exits, no? Blank. And were cut off. Whoever had anything, the pocketbook, shopping bags, was checked for guns. And it happened quite often that I did have guns with me, but I put all kinds of junk on top, vegetables and papers and whatnot. They put their hand in, they could never find it. It was at the very bottom with a cloth, you know, and all that. They let me go. That was one of the SHOAHs I had. Then the other SHOAH was bring money to people that were hiding, and I had no way of surviving if I didn't bring. There was that organization that gave me money to give to them, and sometimes it was far out of the city, and go and bring it to them once a month. Then the other job I had was trying to talk people that had, like in that particular case, grandparents that had a grandchild, little boy maybe 7, 8 years old. The parents of the boy had been taken already. And I wanted to take that child to the doctor. We had our own doctor. He worked officially in a place, in a clinic, or clinic hospital. And, but he did that for us, you know. And once he got that, to take him to a convent that I didn't even know where, I had to pick him up at his grandparents and bring him to another person from the underground, and they took care of the child. And after a while, first I had to talk them into let the child go, because naturally, who wants to separate from a child? And after 2-3 weeks, the child wrote a card that was given to that other person that gave it to me, and for me to go there and show that. When I got off the streetcar to give it, there was already a German soldier holding guard. They had been taken away. So it was saved just in time. Things like that I did.
Who was in charge of your group?
A certain Hirsch. I don't remember anything else. There were more that I knew, but that name is the only one that I remember.
Were there Jews and non-Jews in this group?
No, all I knew is Jews. Yeah.
Do you remember getting any help from outsiders, people who were not in your particular group?
No. I was not the head of that. I was just like a courier, you know. They sent me there, I went there. And on one occasion I had to take a little girl to a convent, and it was far out with a train and whatnot, in another city, in another place, and I wasn't feeling well, and I had to schlep that poor kid yet. My situation wasn't that bad, but the poor child, you could see she was, out of sorts. And as much as I could do, if there was an ice cream parlor, I took the children there. After we visited a doctor, for instance, or what, that particular boy that I was talking about before had shoes that were much too small for him. So I bought him shoes, things like that I could help.
Did you have to assume a new behavior, like a Christian behavior?
No, naturally, because actually I know the customs of the country. My parents were Jewish, I lived like a Jewish child, but deep down there was no difference, I knew every attitude you have to take or whatever from that country.
During any time during the war, did you have to wear a yellow star?
Oh yes.
When was that?
In 43, I guess. Before 43, it must have been 42. Yeah, I certainly did. I have pictures to show the yellow star, and that was not made up for a film or whatever. It was real.
What did it look like?
It was yellow, and the inscription inside was Juif, Jew.
How did you feel the first time you had to wear it?
I was proud of it. That's the funniest part. Let them go the hell to whatever. I'm Jewish and I don't want to be ashamed of it. Only when they started taking Jews and you didn't know what became of them, then I had to hide it, because otherwise it was a matter of life and death. Then you don't play around with that.
What was the reaction of the non-Jewish population when you started to wear it?
They were very helpful, absolutely helpful. As a matter of fact, that apartment I rented with that Madame Bonjean, every morning I went, there was a shoe repairman across the street that had his own store, etc. And I knew that he watched the English channels on the radio. And he knew I was Jewish. And every morning I came in and said, oh, we are nearly winning the war. And, it gave me all, they are at this point and at that point and everything. So, no, they were extremely, as a matter of fact, that fact is known in Belgium. There was a convent with nuns, and there were about 20 Jewish children hidden there. It was a tremendous convent. And Germans came in. I want to see the Jewish children. They couldn't help it. And they counted about how many children they were. Then they left. Tomorrow we are picking them up. And if one child is missing, out of those 20 children, we are going to take one nun. 2 children missing, 2 nuns. Right? You know what they did? Those nuns, I don't know how, but they contacted the underground, and in a few hours, all the Jewish children were gone from there, and we had to place them very fast just for a while to see if they found another place for them to be.
What happened to the nuns?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing, but they wouldn't give those children out.
Do you remember the name of the convent?
No.
Do you remember where the children were taken?
I remember one couple. That's where I went when afterwards they bombarded the railroad station and the house I was in, but I wasn't in then. And I went to that couple and they took 2 children, brother and sister, for a few days. They were hidden too, they were Jews too. But they were personal friends, I knew them. So they took those 2 children. So, and the others, I don't know, the other people from the underground took care. Those two, I took care because I knew they would take them.
When did life change again for you?
It was a different life after the war.
What happened? When were you liberated?
I was liberated in 45.
Do you remember what month?
It was early spring, like May or so, you know.
Who liberated you?
The English.
What was that like?
It was exhilarating, you know. And the Germans running away and people looting the stores because they were hungry. They had nothing to eat. And the Germans, any way they could, they ran. And it wasn't for me to do something, because a soldier is a soldier. He had to do what he had. He was, as far as I'm concerned, he was a human being. Not that I pitied them, no. But I wasn't in a position to do anything against them.
Were you able to locate any of your family after the war?
No. No. My parents had been taken, my two brothers had been taken, my sister, yes. She was in Switzerland, came back with her son and husband, and that's all I can say about that, you know. That's the only family. Yeah, and aunts, my mother's sisters. One was in Switzerland too, the other one was there, and it was in Brussels, but...
Did you return to your home?
No, we had to rent other apartments and such, you know. My parents were gone, my brothers were gone. My sister is the only one that was there.
Did any of the non-Jewish friends or neighbors you had been in contact with explain anything? Did they tell you anything after the war?
Not really. Oh, I had one friend, a non-Jewish friend, yes. She was living across from where my sister lived. That's how I met her. She was a very nice person. You know, she knew I was Jewish, being that I'm the sister of, you know. And it was very awkward because she was extremely nice, but she was a lesbian. And she she told me that she was living with a doctor's daughter, which I couldn't care less one way or another.
Tape 3. Today is September 26, 1996, and our survivor is Esther Krosberg.
Then I was talking about my friend, the non-Jewish girl. She was extremely nice. Her parents were wonderful. And when she started to get a little too nice, then I didn't like it. She wanted me to go live with her. And I could not just say, no, I don't want you, because she was non-Jewish and I was. And at that time, the Germans were still there. So I tried to put her off. I says, I can't just leave, and all kinds of reasons. And she let it go at that, but very insistent. And but she knew, and that was one of the non-Jewish friends I had. I didn't know then that she was a lesbian.
How did you support yourself after the war?
After the war, I worked. First I had a job with the censorship between letters going to Germany and from Germany to Belgium. And that was an official place. I had the papers. I had to show who I was, etc., etc. And I had somebody, a friend, non-Jewish, working in the courthouse. If I was late in the morning, he used to give me a paper. I was cold over there, so cold. And that took a while. Then afterwards, I don't even remember what I did. I had several jobs. Oh yeah, I worked for at one point because it was hard to get a job. You needed a working card. To get a working card, you needed a job, but they didn't want to take you if you didn't have a working. So there was an ad, I guess, in the paper, if I remember well, and it was for a bank, an American bank called the Guaranty Trust Company of New York. And I went to work there as a telephone operator. And I told them I don't have working papers. They made it for me. That was a big, big advantage. And I worked there, and where else? I worked other places. I don't remember exactly. But the bank I did, because when I came to America, I went to the Guaranty Trust Company to ask for a job, and I could prove I had worked there. And the way I looked, it was just like a week after I got here with a hand-me-down coat that was too small on me and whatnot. So I was interviewed, and she seemed very pleased about the interview. But she said to me, I'll call you and let you know. Now that was a no-no because I had no telephone. So I says, well, I have no telephone. When could I call you? So she told me I called, but you know, the way I was dressed and no telephone, even for a newcomer, you know, it was no good. That wasn't a security to have an employee in the bank looking like that and not to be able to reach in case of what, you know. And I never got that job.
When did you get married?
I got married, in December will be 49 years, so figure it out.
Could you tell us your husband's name?
Joseph Krosberg.
How did you meet him?
Very funny. That's a funny story. I had a Jewish girlfriend, and in Belgium the schools were out. Thursday afternoon, you didn't have to go to school. So we were free. I had a friend the same age as me, even looking alike. They took us for sisters. And one day she comes to me, Esther, I have an errand for my mother, and I have to go and bring something, a different neighborhood. Would you go with me? I said yes. And the reason I remember it so well, I had to walk and walk and walk, and it didn't stop. When we arrived there was a boy sitting at a machine. He was about 15, that was Joe, right, with his mother, and he didn't much pay attention to me or to my friend or to anything. And she did what she had to do, and that was it. We left and never even thinking about him nor anything. Then, after the war, I met him once at a party. No, at a big party. It was like a gala party, you know, in a big place. And we had lost touch, my friend and I. Augusta is her name. And she was with one group of friends and I was with another group. And then we saw each other, we embraced naturally. And there was a big, tall guy near her. Remember him? I said, who he? So she says, that's Joseph, the one that you went and we walked so much. I said, that I remember. And from then on, like when I went to big parties like that with my sister and brother-in-law or what, you know, when we came in, there he was with his uncle, you know. And then he told me that his uncle is making custom jewelry and the such. Then I had a brooch that I still have that was gold-plated, a cameo, as a matter of fact, I have it here. And when I was working at the bank at the telephone, I had access to telephone, naturally. And if somebody called from the place, from the bank, he knew that he should not even sneeze. But I left him on the phone. And I asked him if he could gild it over. And he said, sure, why not? You know, and he did, and we met, and little by little, that's how we got to meet.
Where did you live as a young couple?
We lived in Brussels, à la Rue Adolphe de Meur, that I remember. And Sonia, the older one, was born 10 months after I was married, to make it legit. And it was, you know, only cold running water. It was not easy. And from the kitchen to the rest of the room, 2 more rooms. The rest of them, don't get scared, not 10 rooms. And the crib was in the dining room because we had no place. And there were 6 steps to go up and down from the dining room where the baby slept and the kitchen. And he was at work, and I had to bathe the child, warm up water, empty I had no bassinet. It was a big metal basin, a Gesinte basin, and to fill it up and empty it till I finished. And we had to wash with diaper service. Who knew about that? Till I came to America, I didn't even know that such a thing existed. So at night, when he came back, he had to, I put it to boil, right, on the gas, and he had to wash it because I got an infection on my arm through her, because that hospital where she was born was one of the best. That they had like a kind of virus, and the babies broke out, and I had to open every little thing, every little like a blister, you know, otherwise it spread if it opens. And from there, I got an infection very badly. It was all red. My arm was very bad. So I came back from work at 2 o'clock and had to start washing diapers. Right?
How long did you remain in Brussels?
We remained in Brussels. When did we leave? In '53 to go to Santo Domingo.
Why did you choose this?
Because my sister had gone there. Her husband had a brother there and a sister. And
had you ever heard of this place before?
No, not at all. And she found a job there, and so did my brother-in-law. And she wrote letters like, "It's so beautiful here. I have a maid that brings me my orange juice at 10 o'clock where I work. And 10 minutes away is the beach. And it's so nice." When I heard that she had a maid, I had to go there. That was a must. A maid? What's the matter? You know? So that's how we went there after my sister had gone there, because her husband's brother and sister were there. That's it.
How long did you live there?
4.5 years, 9 years too much.
Where did you go after that?
Came to America.
And where did you live?
We lived in the Bronx. I came without my husband for 2.5 months because all we possessed, our possession was cattle. And there was a big drought, and we couldn't sell the cattle. That was our money. So, meanwhile, the older one was born in Belgium. She was a foreigner there. So was I, so was my husband. But the younger one was born there. And she needed a special passport. And to get the passport, I had to go from where I lived, SHOAH, which was a Jewish settlement, and by car 6 hours to go to the city where the consulate was, the embassy or whatever, you know, and make the application to be able to come here. And that after I got her, you know, everything, it was very hard to get a passport. They didn't want to give it to me because I was a woman. I didn't know that. They didn't say that. So finally we indirectly found out the reason they sent me back to SHOAH, and I says, why? I'm here. Why can't you? We need one more signature. I said, so give it to me. Let that person sign. And my sister was living in the city, so I had where to stay. But they didn't want to give it. He had to take off from work and go for the passport. Once she got the passport, we had 3 weeks on that passport to leave. If we didn't leave, we had to either leave the baby there, the child there, or stay there. We wouldn't leave her, and that was a catastrophe. I wanted out, out, out. So
when did you arrive in America, United
in
States?
1957, if I remember well. He's better with dates, my husband.
How did you support yourselves when you first got here?
Well, frankly, first of all, the older one went to school, took care of the vaccinations, because it was very important to me. I couldn't get the vaccination over there. For the little one, I had to buy 100 vaccinations and give it away free for the natives, because I needed one for my child.
What was
Anyway.
your younger daughter's name? What's your daughter's name?
My daughter, the older one is Sonia, and the younger one is Frida. And
Did you work in America?
yes, I worked as a counter girl in a dairy restaurant, a Jewish dairy restaurant. But first I had to take care of the children. The older one went to school, but not the little one. So I had to put her in the nursery school. And it was very hard because there were poor people. It was a poor neighborhood, Puerto Rican. I didn't know, but that's what it was. And I had no alternative anyway, because I didn't have the choice of money to say I want to go to a better place. But at that time it wasn't bad. And the one that took care of placing the children in that particular, she says to me, who should I give that? There is only one spot for one child left. And she says, should I give it to you, or that man has 4 children and his wife left him? So who should I give it to first? That was a social worker. So I says, well, I cannot tell you what to do. She gave me the spot. So I put Frida in that nursery school. Didn't cost me anything, from 8 to 6. So I was able to go to work as a counter girl in that restaurant. And I worked there. My husband came after 2.5 months. He managed to get some money. And he sent me money. That's another one. I was short of money till I made every arrangement with the children in school and the other, and get an apartment. And so...
How do you identify now as a Jew?
Very much so. I'm very Jewish. Extremely so. It's a Goyish neighborhood here, but comes Hanukkah, my menorah is out on the window. I'm not ashamed to say who I am. I'm not hiding it, on the contrary, And like I have a gardener coming for the lawn. He cannot make it, I don't want him here when the holidays are here. That I respect myself and I respect the others. I wouldn't do it for them, and I don't want them to do it for me. So, but very religious I'm not. I'm truthful, I'll ride on Saturday or whatever. I'll go eat in a restaurant. I love lobsters. I'm not ashamed to say it, and that's not permitted in the Jewish religion, I know that. And otherwise, I feel extremely Jewish. Everything Jewish touches me. A movie or anything, a Yiddish word, like a Jewish theater. We go sometimes on 50th somehow Street, where they have Jewish shows, Jewish theater. And we go and we know the names of the one that wrote it, or Shalom Aleichem, or whatever, all that. And that we hear a Jewish word, is my husband and I, we are so happy. It's something that touches us.
How do you spend your free time now?
Now, I told you, as much as I was running around, like, playing and running to theaters and this and that with friends, because he was working. Now I'm much more sedate. I cannot do it anymore. That's what it amounts to. But I still function. We still go out. He loves opera. We have a subscription every year. They call us from the opera. We don't even have to go there and give us a choice state opera, not the Met. And we have friends. We play cards. And I play Mahjong and canasta. That's in the afternoons, sometimes at night, And
Do you have any dreams or nightmares?
no. Nightmares lately a little. I'm always lost someplace and I can't find my way back.
What do you think gave you the strength to survive?
I was young. I was very daring. Like, for instance, one time the Germans blocked off a whole street, and every Jew there, if he didn't have a Belgian identity card, was taken. And you had to pass a few checkpoints. I passed 2 of them. They saw my Belgian identity card, which wasn't me, on the picture. And then the 3rd one was civilian. That was dangerous. A German civilian is always dangerous because he is an officer. So I figured there I have to be extremely careful. What I did was, daring, like I said, I walked over to him and I says, "What's the matter here? Will I finally," and started yelling, "My parents are waiting for me and here you are keeping me. When will I finally get out of here?" He took my arm and said, "Fine, you are getting out. That's the last checkpoint. Don't be mad at us. Okay?" And when I left, I was shaking, And the people they went in every house, every apartment, took out the Jews. And I was going home, actually. That's when, and we had a curfew. Everybody, the Belgian people too. So.
Did you ever question the existence of God?
Yes. Because I was talking to even very prominent people. And I says, "Why did he do it? Why did he kill small children?" That was my main beef. So he says, "For the sins of the parents." Well, I don't think that we committed that big a sin as to have a child killed. But, if some "Oi mam in you," "Oi got in you," I'll say it every time. That is no failing. Or if something, "Oh God," that comes first.
Did you ever witness any miracles?
No. I don't believe in it.
What advice do you have for your children, grandchildren, future generations?
What advice? It's very hard, especially in this time where the Nazis start coming up again. It's extremely hard. My older daughter has 3 children, Sonia, and she, for the holidays, the children go to shul. The girls and even the boy joined the USY, and they are very, follow the religion as much as they can. My younger one, yeah.
We had to stop our tape because of technical. The survivor is Esther Krosberg.
This is I'm Esther Krosberg, and this is my husband, Joseph Krosberg. Behind him is my daughter Frida Ostro, and her daughter Diana Ostro.
So, what I have to say, being married for almost 49 years, I hope for another one.
Well, so do I.
And I'm happy that I married you.
So am I. Always.
Very proud of my grandparents. I love them very much.
And I as well. I'm extremely proud of them. They, I think, did a pretty good job all these years. And obviously the love is there, and you could see that. And it's been shown to the children, grandchildren, and everyone is just very happy to be here, be able to tell the story.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We thank you. You were super. Absolutely super. And the cameraman.
The technician, the
Ed,
master.
The master, the technician, Mr. Ed. He's super too.
Yeah.
Not super too, but very super.